Section 373 needs to be stripped and the bill sent back to the House so that President Trump can sign into law and cement his legacy as a champion of aviation safety. It would tighten the rules for the military operating in congested D.C. airspace. It would require all aircraft in congested airspace to receive and transmit ADS-B signals and evaluate the airspace design around commercial airports. The ROTOR Act will save lives.
It's time to make sure that aviation safety is a prime objective, not a secondary objective, a prime objective of this Congress.
The battle over America's air safety has exploded on Capitol Hill. Republican Senator Ted Cruz has threatened to hold up government funding after the end of January if reforms don't pass by then to tighten up the rules on military flights. Cruz says the stakes could not be higher. He points directly to the deadly midair collision over Washington, D.C., where an Army Black Hawk helicopter struck a passenger jet, killing all 67 people on board in January. A tragedy, he says, that exposed dangerous gaps in military aviation safety. At the center of the storm is Section 373 of the National Defense Authorization Act. The massive $900 billion defense bill has already passed the House and now faces a critical Senate vote. But critics warned this single provision could undo years of hard-won safety reforms. Senator Cruz, joined by Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell, has filed a bipartisan amendment to strike Section 373 entirely. They say the language would weaken current law by allowing military aircraft to reduce or disable ADS-B transmissions, the system that broadcasts an aircraft's precise location to others in the sky. Senators Cruz and Cantwell urged Congress to remove any language that would permit the military to return to silent operations in crowded skies.
Section 373 needs to be stripped and the bill sent back to the House so that President Trump can sign into law and cement his legacy as a champion of aviation safety. In addition to stripping this language, Congress should enact the Bipartisan ROTOR Act, which Senator Cantwell and I authored together. Our bill, which we're working to tee up for a vote before the full Senate, would require precise location transmission for all aircraft operating around D.C. airspace.
373 of the NDAA doesn't belong in any bill. There's no reason to have this language in the National Defense Authorization Act unless you're somebody who wants to continue to see letting the military do whatever they want to do in a congested airspace. The NTSB does oppose Section 373. The families oppose it. You're going to hear from them right now. The Bipartisan Commerce Committee obviously opposes it, and I hope that the American people will help us oppose it. It's time to make sure that aviation safety is a prime objective, not a secondary objective, a prime objective of this Congress.
It would tighten the rules for the military operating in congested D.C. airspace. It would require all aircraft in congested airspace to receive and transmit ADS-B signals and evaluate the airspace design around commercial airports. The ROTOR Act will save lives. ADS-B can broadcast an aircraft's position, altitude, and velocity much faster than traditional radar, giving air traffic control and other aircraft this crucial information in near real time. Section 373 would take steps to reverse this rule, not even a year after the fatal crash. Instead of permitting more military helicopter flights in D.C., Congress should strip this provision from the bill.
Section 373 in the current National Defense Authorization Act now threatens to undo everything all the progress that was already made. And it will compromise the safety around Reagan National Airport. President Trump has been delivering airspace safety. We urge him to intervene, strike this provision, and replace it with ROTOR. We ask Congress, strike this provision and replace it with ROTOR.
ADSB was made mandatory by the Federal Aviation Administration in March. The rule came after years of warnings about congestion in the tightly controlled airspace around the nation's capital. Before the January crash, military helicopters routinely flew through that airspace without broadcasting their positions. The National Transportation Safety Board Chair, Jennifer Homendy, has issued a stark warning. She says Section 373 would roll back safeguards put in place after the deadly collision and allow the military to bypass proven safety protocols.
I want to start by saying this is not something normally where we weigh in so strongly on legislation that is moving before the House and Senate. But given that the DCA investigation is really our agency's highest priority right now, we think it's important that we talk about what is happening with NDAA. So the NTSB vehemently opposes Section 373 of the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. This section, to the lay reader, is drafted to seemingly enhance safety. I want to be very clear that it does not in any way enhance safety. In fact, it reverses safety changes made after the midair collision, after issuance of our urgent safety recommendations, after the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, rightfully implemented our urgent safety recommendations and essentially gives the military unfettered access to the crowded and complex DC airspace. In fact, it would allow the secretary of any military department, generals, flag officials, to allow training missions in the DC airspace to take place without key safety reforms put in place after the January 29th midair collision. This is a significant safety setback. It represents an unacceptable risk to the flying public, to commercial and military aircraft crews, and to the residents in the region. It's also an unthinkable dismissal of our investigation and of 67 families who lost loved ones in a tragedy that was entirely preventable. This is shameful. It is shameful. The question is this legislation in this section better or worse than what existed on January 29th at the time of the midair collision? It is not better, it's worse, or equal. I would say this is exactly what existed at 8 p.m. on January 29th, about 50 minutes before the midair collision. This doesn't improve anything. In fact, I would say with some of these waiver provisions and very little role for the Secretary of Transportation and the FAA, it goes even farther back.
Under the proposed provision, military helicopters would only be required to warn nearby commercial aircraft using older systems, essentially restoring the rules that existed before the crash. Critics argue those rules failed with catastrophic consequences. Families of those killed say the reforms must honor the dead, not repeat the mistakes that led to the disaster. Airlines, pilots, and transport unions have joined the backlash. The Transportation Trades Department called the proposal reckless, warning it would undermine NTSB recommendations and erode public confidence in commercial aviation safety. Instead, lawmakers are pushing for the ROTOR Act. The bipartisan measure would strengthen ADSB requirements, close loopholes for military aircraft, and improve transparency between defense and transport authorities.